members of the 15th
Alright,
team
finish this round out.
Also frequently traveled with the Saudi Crown Prince. Today, a Turkish newspaper released new surveillance
Because
images that
why
show
not?
the same man entering the Saudi consulate hours before Khashoggi disappeared. The images also show him at the Saudi Consul General's home later that day, then leaving an Istanbul hotel, and then at the airport to leave Turkey that night. In an interview with the New York Times today, Donald Trump gave up the game of pretending that he was waiting to find out what happened to Jamal Khashoggi. He told the Times, "This one has caught the imagination of the world. Unfortunately, it's not a positive, unless the miracle of all miracles happens. I would acknowledge that he's dead." That's based on everything. Intelligence coming from every side. Joining our discussion now, Ned Price, the former senior director and spokesperson for the National Security Council and a former CIA analyst. He is an MSNBC national security contributor. Also joining us, Peter Weiner is a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He was an advisor to the past three Republican presidents, and Josh Holman, national political reporter for NBC News. And Ned Price, I wanted to get your reading of how the administration's language has changed, or possibly whether Donald Trump himself has just fallen out of the course that Mike Pompeo was obviously trying to maintain, of refusing to use the words dead or alive, or just acknowledge that there's even a question about is he dead.
Yeah, Lawrence, I was reminded watching your intro that this was the same Mike Pompeo who just earlier this week wrote an essay in Foreign Affairs on U.S. strategy towards Iran. And the last section of that essay is called The Power of Moral Clarity. Well, we have seen anything but moral clarity from Mike Pompeo and from his boss, Donald Trump. It is certainly not moral clarity to turn your back on a reporter who asked, is Jamal Khashoggi dead? It is certainly not moral clarity to travel to Riyadh for a grip and grin, to be all laughs and all smiles next to Mohammed bin Salman, who seems to be the prime suspect, the prime architect in this murder, and then to come back to D.C. and claim that you issued something along the lines of an ultimatum. There is a tremendous discordance between those two. That is not moral clarity. What we have seen from Mike Pompeo is nothing but moral cowardice, and we have seen the same from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has become in all of this what seems to be a co-conspirator in the cover-up. There's an old adage in this town that the cover-up is worse than the crime. That is certainly not the case, given the heinous crime we're talking about here. But there is a cover-up that is going on that the Saudis seem to have been behind, but that Donald Trump has been all too happy to support.
Peter, give the Saudis more time. Give the Saudis more time to figure out what happened in one of their consulates. How much time would that take?
Well, yeah, it would take, in one sense, forever, and it would take no time at all, because they know what happened. They were, of course, complicit. The Crown Prince was involved in this, and I think Ned is right. This is part of the cover-up. I just want to say that this idea of Mike Pompeo talking about moral clarity, what's so absurd about that is that presupposes that there is in the president a person with a moral view of things. And I think the fundamental interpretive fact of the Trump presidency, and I think that this Saudi example is only one manifestation of it, is this is a person who is fundamentally amoral and immoral. He is a man without human empathy or without human sympathy, and in many respects a man without conscience. And I think what you've seen over the last several days is a person who is reacting that way. Because most of us hear about this, not just a murder, but a particularly gruesome murder with dismemberment and torture. And you're horrified by it, you're angered by it, and you feel that there has to be a response to it. I don't think Donald Trump is capable of that. And I think that we've seen that lack of human empathy and conscience in almost every arena of the Trump presidency. It explains the cruelty, it explains the policy at the border, it explains the pathological lies, it explains the fact that he's a man without loyalty. And I think that this is just the latest arena in which we're seeing this ugly drama play itself out.
The Republican chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Corker, said this. This is going to come to a head in a very short amount of time. This isn't getting better over time. It seems to me over the next week or so, people are going to know more about what happened. It can't go on that long. They need to come out and share their views of what happened and share with us. And Josh, he's talking about the administration there when he says they need to come out and share their views. And so the Trump administration has not been sharing their views with Republican senators.
They have not. They have been trying to keep their comments very limited until the Saudis come out with whatever their new explanation is going to be. And all the indications, Lawrence, are that the Saudis are trying to reverse engineer how much information is already out there. How much does the U.S. intelligence community and other spy agencies already know about what happened, and therefore what can the Saudis really get away with in their explanation? So the U.S. is trying not to get ahead of that. We see Secretary Pompeo saying we need to give the Saudis a few more days to fully investigate this. And the U.S. line on this has been, look, they say they're going to do a transparent investigation, and we are going to see the results of that. And if it's a credible investigation, if it's thorough, we'll be able to see that. And if it's a sham and they're trying to cover things up, we'll be able to see that too. But the question here that the State Department, the White House, top U.S. officials have been unable to answer, Lawrence, is how does a authoritarian government perform a full-fledged investigation when the chief culprit of who is likely implicated in this is the person atop that government? There seems to be no indication that the Saudi government would be able to conduct an investigation that would turn up, actually, yes, Crown Prince Mohammed ordered a killing. So if that possibility of the investigation is taken off the table, it's very difficult to see how this turns out something that the world sees as credible.
And then, Price, tonight, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is running away from questions about has he heard the audio recording of the murder, has he read any transcript of the recording of the murder, because investigative reporting in the Washington Post, the New York Times, NBC News is running ahead of the official story as it's being managed by both the Saudis and the United States. And so reporters are now equipped with questions that are running ahead of where Mike Pompeo wants to be.
Yeah, Lawrence, we're getting into pretty dangerous territory because it seems like what our intelligence community has in its possession is quite different from what we've heard from people like Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo. This is not the first time there's been a disparity. We need only look back at the Russia case to see our intelligence community believing one thing firmly and unanimously and something else completely different coming from Donald Trump's mouth. But it seems like we're getting in that territory again, and this is going to create even more tension and frustration between Donald Trump and his intelligence community if he continues to spout conclusions, to say things like rogue killing teams that just don't comport with what our intelligence community already has in hand.
Peter Weiner, how should a president handle a crisis like this with a historic geopolitical ally with whom there are many reasons to try to maintain the alliance in the way that it works best, when that ally is possibly implicated in something as bad as this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I should stipulate that this is not an easy foreign policy challenge. Any president would face the challenge for the reason that you said. I think what I would do first, in terms of faulting President Trump, is that all of his instincts and all of his reactions have made the situation worse, not better. And what you would want from a president is one to speak out with really some degree of moral clarity on this, and that is not what happened with Trump. All of his reactions were really discordant with traditional American values, right? If one was nativistic, he said Mr. Khashoggi wasn't an American citizen. Get it? He's not Caucasian. He's Muslim. He's not really one of us. It was transactional. It's going to cost us money. And then there was the alibi, the rogue killers. You've got to give moral voice. That arises from a real moral instinct. At the same time, you've got to be able to work with that regime and say there has to be a consequence to it without necessarily overturning the entire regime. The concern here, if the worry is that the House of Assad may fall, is that in mishandling this so badly, both them and us, there's so much pressure that is created, is that it actually accelerates the fall, and that would be problematic because Saudi Arabia, for all of its problems and oppressive ways, is something of a bulwark against Iran. So I think what we're seeing with Trump is somebody who's mishandling it and may get the worst of all possible worlds.
Ned Price, Peter Weiner, Josh Lieberman, thank you for starting us off tonight. Really appreciate it. And when we come back, Donald Trump's desperate lies, and they are becoming more and more desperate lies about covering pre-existing conditions in healthcare policies. Why the Republicans are campaigning on the big lie. And as Rachel said, we will be joined by former CIA officer Abigail Spanberger, who is running for Congress. She'll respond to what she describes as shameful comments made by the Republican opponent, Congressman Dave Pratt.
Yes.
See, feel, climb. First out, last in. Look round corners, look in crannies, go down dark alleys, lose yourself, push your left, push boundaries, go walkabout, get sane, go after the goosebumps. Never stop discovery.
Grubhub is a delivery app that lets you order from all your favorite local restaurants. And yeah, it is that easy. Grubhub, restaurants you love, delivered.
Dogs love my Nutrish treats. Whoa!
Real meat treats from Rachel Ray Nutrish, inspired by recipes from Rachel's Kitchen. U.S. beef or chicken is the first ingredient. Treats from Nutrish. More recipes, real ingredients, feel good.
Once in 500-year storm should happen every 500 years, right? Fact is, there have been 26 in the last decade. Allstate is adapting with drones to assess home damage sooner. And if a flying object damages your car, you can snap a photo and get your claim processed in hours, not days. Plus, Allstate can pay your claim in minutes. Now that you know the truth, are you in good hands?
I love it.
Look at you!
Great costumes are packaged. They're created. Happy Halloween from Goodwill of Silicon Valley.
Bunker.
I'm ready to crush it. I'm ready to do what no one on my phone system.
Get back. We know how the world has done before.
All I need is access, tools,
Connections.
high-speed connection.
Through Internet Essentials, Comcast has connected more than 6 million low-income people to low-cost, high-speed internet at home.
I'm trying to see homework here.
So they're ready for anything.
This afternoon, President Trump issued a campaign tweet lying to voters about the Republican position on health insurance for people with pre-existing conditions. The tweet says, all Republicans support people with pre-existing conditions. And if they don't, they will after I speak to them. I am in total support. Also, Democrats will destroy your Medicare, and I will keep it healthy and well. Donald Trump, of course, does not know the meaning of the word healthy. Here is what Donald Trump promised when he was running for president.
Repeal and replace that horror show called Obamacare. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare.
We're losing with Obamacare, which will be repealed and replaced. Obamacare is a disaster. We're going to repeal it and replace it.
You know, my poll numbers are going through the roof. You know why? I really believe a big part of it is Obamacare. Because we're going to repeal it and replace it.
And now Republican poll numbers are in trouble because of exactly that. Once elected, Donald Trump and the Republicans tried to repeal Obamacare and failed, and then the Republicans did manage to find room in their giant deficit-exploding tax cut for the rich to effectively repeal the individual mandate to buy health insurance in Obamacare. And then the Trump Justice Department joined Republican state attorneys general in a lawsuit that seeks to repeal all of Obamacare, including the legal provision that requires health insurers to cover people with pre-existing conditions. Donald Trump and the Republicans have done everything they possibly can to eliminate the guarantee of health insurance for people with pre-existing conditions. And now that they have discovered that that is a very unpopular thing to do, they have simply begun to lie about their position while continuing to push the lawsuit that would, in fact, eliminate coverage for pre-existing conditions.
We can protect pre-existing conditions, and you need to understand, everyone agrees we're going to protect pre-existing conditions.
It was Donald Trump who called him lying, Ted, not me. Ted Cruz is lying, of course, and he is one of the Republican Senate candidates who's smart enough to know that he is lying. The Republican Senate candidate in Arizona, Martha McSally, is telling the same kind of lie to voters there. Josh Hawley, Republican Senate candidate in Missouri, is telling the same kind of lie in his campaign against Democrat Claire McCaskill, who actually does support coverage for pre-existing conditions and actually voted for the only federal law in American history that does
Pretty
that.
wimpy, dude.
Obamacare.
Pretty
Governor
wimpy.
Scott Walker is struggling in his re-election bid in Wisconsin. Republicans have actually advised the White House not to waste President Trump's campaign time in Wisconsin, where they believe Scott Walker cannot win re-election. But President Trump wants to go to Wisconsin anyway, probably just to remind people that he won Wisconsin. And when President Trump does campaign with Scott Walker in Wisconsin, you will surely hear some version of this big lie.
Covering pre-existing conditions is the worst thing. This is just the right thing to do. As long as I'm governor, I will always cover pre-existing conditions.
It is the right thing to do, but Governor Scott Walker is fully supportive of the wrong thing. He's fully supportive of his state attorney general, who has joined the federal lawsuit to effectively repeal Obamacare and eliminate the federal guarantee covering pre-existing conditions. Joining us now, Jared Bernstein, Senior Fellow at the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. He was an economic policy advisor to Vice President Biden. And Ron Klain is with us, the former Chief of Staff to Vice Presidents Joe Biden and Al Gore, and former senior aide to President Obama. And Ron Klain, I have to say, when a party gets in trouble campaigning because they're on the wrong side of an issue, I have never before seen the strategy of let's all hold hands and just lie about everything we've been trying to do for the last 2 years.
Yeah, you know, Lawrence, voters trusting Republicans to protect their pre-existing conditions at this stage will be like Dorothy in the very last scene of The Wizard of Oz, handing Toto over to the Wicked Witch and saying, I'm sure this will all be fine. The Republicans voted 60 times to get rid of protection for pre-existing conditions. They went to court to get rid of it. President Trump campaigned on getting rid of it, and then he threw a beer bash in the Rose Garden to celebrate Republicans passing a bill to get rid of it. They tried to strong-arm John McCain on one of his last votes in the Senate to get rid of it. And if all that wasn't enough, just the other day, Mitch McConnell promised that if the Democrats don't take back the House and the Senate, he will try again to get rid of it. So it's absolutely clear what's going to happen, and the only way to protect coverage for pre-existing conditions is for voters to elect a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. Otherwise, this will go away.
Jared Bernstein, can the Republicans just get away with this lie? Is the subject complicated enough that the voters just can't follow this?
Well, now they listen to the very, very clear logic that both you and Ron Klain just laid out. In fact, he even threw Toto into the mix. Frankly, broke my heart for a second. Of course, people who are paying any attention to the reality of the situation, as the two of you have just articulated, have to know that these lies are so pervasive. But there is a wrinkle that I want people to know about. Some of the Republican plans argue that insurers must cover everyone, all coverage. They can't deny coverage. And some of these plans actually do have that. However, they then say those insurers can charge people with pre-existing conditions whatever they want in terms of premiums, and they don't have to even cover illnesses related to pre-existing conditions. So, if you have heart disease and you get coverage, they can charge you hundreds of thousands of dollars for your premium, and if you have a heart attack, your insurer can say, well, we're not covering those claims because they're pre-existing. So